Hi everyone, we're so happy to have you join us today for our webinar in which we discuss the cybersecurity skills gap. Is it a talent shortage or an image problem? My name is Kelli Hogan and I'm the head of marketing communications at Tessian. We're a technology company building the world's first human layer security platform to protect people on email. But as the name suggests, this webinar isn't about Tessian. It's about the skills gap in cybersecurity, which is something I imagine you're all deeply familiar with as it's been a topic of discussion for months, if not recent years. Today, we're going to be exploring the skills gap specifically through the lens of women working in cybersecurity today. The webinar consists of two parts. In the first part, I'll share key learnings from Tessian's Opportunity in Cybersecurity Report 2020. This is a new piece of research that we just published and has three core components. Economic data, which comes from analysis conducted by the Center for Economics and Business Research, survey data of 200 female cybersecurity professionals in the US and the UK, and profiles of a dozen practitioners building incredible careers in cybersecurity. If you haven't yet had a chance to check out the report, you can easily access it through the webinar portal. In the second part of this webinar, I'll be joined by three of the women who contributed to the report for a live discussion and Q&A. We'll be covering topics like challenges with starting and building a career in cybersecurity, unique opportunities the industry offers, how to improve recruitment to attract new and diverse talent, and importantly, how to approach building cybersecurity teams as the threat landscape evolves, and how to manage distributed teams as remote working increases. We'll also be answering questions from listeners, so please submit yours through the Q&A tool in your display window. So who are the women that will be joining us? They're cybersecurity professionals with incredibly diverse backgrounds, roles, and remits. We're lucky to have Carolann, former Chief Information Security Officer of KPMG, Hayley, Cybersecurity Architect at Nielsen, and Tess Frieswick, Client Success Manager at Kivu, a cybersecurity consultancy. Each woman will, of course, introduce herself and provide a bit of background on her experience before we jump into the conversation and Q&A. But first, as mentioned, we'll set the stage by exploring some key learnings from the Opportunity in Cybersecurity Report 2020. Our report was inspired and is based on a startling fact. There are over 4 million unfilled jobs in cybersecurity today. That means that the workforce needs to grow by 145% to meet the current global demand. One very obvious and well-known reason for the shortfall is that there's a lack of skilled talent to meet the demand. But it's not just a skills gap, there's also a gender gap, with women making up less than a quarter of the total workforce. I think everyone who's joined this webinar can agree that that's a massive problem that we have to solve. And it's essential because better diversity and more diversity means better solutions. After all, cybersecurity plays a pivotal role in supporting organizations and government bodies, and also the economy. Today, the cybersecurity industry contributes $107.7 billion in the United States. And if we were to minimize the gender gap, and if the number of women working in cybersecurity rose to equal that of men, we'd see an additional economic boost of $30.4 billion. This would bring the total economic contribution of the cybersecurity industry in the US alone up to $138 billion. Now, the economic footprint would grow even more if the wage gap were eliminated. Currently in the US, women in cybersecurity make 17% less than their male counterparts, and in the UK, that's 19%. If we were to equalize salaries, we'd obviously see an additional economic impact. Unfortunately, though, quantifying the problem illuminates it, but it doesn't solve it. With a workforce that's twice as likely to be male, we have to ask ourselves, what is preventing women from considering and joining the cybersecurity industry altogether? After all, salaries are higher than average, and the wage gap, though it exists, is actually 10% lower than the national average. There's also unlimited growth potential. Last, cybersecurity is an industry that's fairly recession-proof or resilient. It should be considered a very attractive option to people. There are some things holding people back. According to 66% of women working in cybersecurity, the industry does have a gender bias problem. It's important to note that our survey respondents span 4 generations and opinion around gender were consistent. But importantly, gender bias isn't the biggest challenge women working in cybersecurity have faced. In fact, only 23% of women cited a lack of gender balance as a barrier to entry. Instead, the problem seems to be that the industry is largely misunderstood. When asked why so many cybersecurity positions are currently unfilled, 42% of women said because the industry isn't considered cool or exciting. And this was echoed in the interviews that we conducted with the women we profiled. On top of that, half of the women believe representations of the industry in the media need to change in order to encourage more women to explore cybersecurity roles. This means we have to demystify the industry and paint a more accurate and appealing picture of the work we do in order to combat the talent gap. We can start to paint a more accurate picture by clearly defining the skills required to thrive in cybersecurity. While technical skills are no doubt important and in fact requisite for certain roles, those surveyed also count creative thinking and collaboration amongst the top 5 skills needed. And as people progress in their careers, like in other industries, managerial skills are more necessary than technical. Of course, the skills needed vary depending on the role. The skills required to thrive as a CISO will be different from that of a data scientist or a pen tester. But the point is to highlight the diversity of the roles and the skills in order to improve recruitment. What's also important is to highlight that the industry is future-proof, and I'm very careful and mindful about saying this in today's current economic climate, which is quite volatile. But generally speaking, the outlook for cybersecurity is good. The global cybersecurity market has grown 30 times in the last 13 years, and in 2019, the industry received record venture capital investment. This fast-paced growth is helping women currently working in the cybersecurity industry feel quite secure. 93% surveyed said that they feel secure or very secure working in the industry, and that's huge, especially in uncertain or unprecedented times like these. Beyond having peace of mind and a sense of stability, women working in cybersecurity believe they're solving real-world problems and are making a positive impact doing so. In fact, over half, 56% of those we surveyed said they joined the industry because they believe cybersecurity is one of the most important industries today. Which is impressive, but it's even more startling that this is not the number one reason why they joined, or most joined. Despite the inaccurate representations of the industry that we mentioned, which leads some people to believe it's not cool or exciting, most women have joined because of the exciting and innovative work that cybersecurity enables them to do. In their eyes, some of the most important tech developments today include IoT and securing devices and artificial intelligence and machine learning. Many of the women who contributed to the report, including our Tessian engineers, are working on projects involving both. But in order for this industry to continue driving innovation, we have to inspire more people to take advantage of the millions of opportunities available. So to recap what we've discussed and what the report findings are, cybersecurity needs diversity if we're going to defend against the ever-evolving threat landscape. And this goes beyond gender diversity. We need to encourage people with different educational and professional backgrounds to consider cybersecurity as well. Part of the problem is that people do not know or understand what skills are required to thrive in a cybersecurity role. Importantly, this industry is not just for tech people. Creativity and collaboration are equally as important. Finally, despite popular belief, there is no stereotypical cybersecurity role. And what better way to illustrate that than to talk to 3 women currently working in the industry who each have their own unique experiences and trajectories. Excellent. So before we get started, it'd be excellent if each woman introduced herself. So Carolann, Hayley, and Tess, could you please tell those who are listening a little bit about your background, what you're doing right now, and where you work? So Carolann, why don't you start? In case she's having any difficulty, Hayley, do you want to introduce yourself?
Not a problem. Hi, everyone. My name is Hayley Bly. I work for Nielsen. You may have heard of us for either measurement of retail or media. I am a cybersecurity architect at Nielsen, so our team either implements vendor tools or builds from scratch a lot of the tooling that our incident response or threat intelligence teams use to perform investigations within our network, for example. My background is computer science. That's what I received my undergraduate degree in. Kind of accidentally fell into cybersecurity at Nielsen and was just very inspired by the work and the people that I'm working with. So decided to stick around and get to know the work a lot more, and I'm currently outside of work doing my master's in cybersecurity online.
Brilliant. Thank you. Tess, do you want to introduce yourself, please?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Tess Frieswick. I work as a client success manager at Kivu Consulting. Kivu is a cybersecurity consulting firm. I work on their managed detection and response team. So I'm helping manage client relationships and build a new line of business. This position that is solely dedicated to cybersecurity. I recently started this job last month after leaving a position at Uber. I worked there as a senior security analyst for over a year, and that's part of what piqued my interest in cybersecurity with the limited experience that I had there, and I just really wanted to pursue it. So I'm excited for this new opportunity and to learn more about the field.
Great. And Carolann, I think we've resolved your issues. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes. Hi, I am Carolann Shields. I'm the former CISO for KPMG. I've been in security for about 13 years. Prior to that, I managed application development for financial systems for 10 years. So I've been in IT business overall for 23 years. I got into security by accident. I worked a lot with the security team on projects like data classification, identity and access management. And when the opportunity came up, they asked me to join the security team. And it's become a passion of mine, and I really enjoy the role, and it was something I never thought about doing. So it's definitely something I think other women should consider looking into.
Excellent. So I think what would be great to kick off with is, as you're saying, some people have fell into the role or they've been surprised by how much they've developed a passion for it. What do you think are some of the unique opportunities that are available in cybersecurity that might not be available in other industries? Hayley, do you want to start?
Sure. I think that you can literally do anything in cybersecurity. So whether you're technical, non-technical, inspired by policy or wanting to work directly with application development teams or, consulting even. So whatever your skill set is, you can find a home within cybersecurity. I personally just, loved computer science and thought I was going to be a developer and really wanted to stay close to the technology. But not everyone that I work with is inspired by the same thing that I am. So the opportunity is just really so big. You can, find anything that fits your passion within cybersecurity.
Carolann, what do you think cybersecurity can offer?
I mean, I think it's similar to Hayley, that what cybersecurity has a broad range of types of roles and types of people. I think being creative and being collaborative are two of the most important skills that you need in that in our environment. And when I have needed to fill junior roles, I have always looked kind of internally at people who are talented in other roles and, tried to see if they were interested in security and even giving them time just as a trial run. And I have found that several women in the organization that, moved over into security and are really enjoying it. I mean, you even have, if you think about security awareness and training, there's a lot there around events planning and developing training materials, and a lot of that is a great entryway for someone who doesn't even have technical skills to enter into the cybersecurity business. So it's definitely, what I think is that it has so many different types of roles that I don't think we couldn't find a home for someone if they were really interested.
Amazing. And with so much opportunity, it seems though, like obviously that one of the themes of the report is that there are still some barriers to entry, whether they're literal or perceived. Have any of you experienced particular setbacks or barriers or challenges as you've entered the industry or grown your career within cybersecurity? Tess, do you want to take this one to start?
Sure. So I first became interested in cybersecurity after the 2016 American presidential election. I was interested in learning about Russian interference in the election because my background is in international relations. And so I wanted to take a cybersecurity class, but they weren't offered at my university. So I think one barrier is that, college level students don't always have access to classes or resources where they can learn about cybersecurity. So I took a computer science class. For the years I've taken it upon myself to teach myself as much as I can about the industry and the concepts and what technical stuff I could understand on my own. So I would say that's definitely a barrier. And then with the theme of this webinar and Tessian's project, it is a bit intimidating going to a field that's male-dominated and going into interviews with just men, but I'm very proud to be the only female on my team, and when I was at Uber, I was the only female senior analyst on my team. So I think it's just something that you have to get used to, and then women just have to be more open about it, supportive of one another as they try to get into the field.
Tess, I also am the only woman on my team, or my immediate team, rather. But I totally agree with you on, the two main barriers to entry. For me, I think the only reason that perception almost was not my barrier is because I accidentally fell in the role, and then at that point I was already in it. And from my experience, cybersecurity is actually, way better in gender neutrality than some of the other fields that I've worked in within technology. I've never felt any sort of barrier to entry if there's a new role or a new project that I'm intrigued by and want to take on. I've actually been, very encouraged by not only my team, but, other vendors and other folks working in cybersecurity that I work with to take that on. So once you get past the initial perception, it's really a welcoming field and somewhere where, if you want to jump into something like Carolann mentioned, regardless of whether you have the experience, there's opportunity to do so.
So Carolann, you mentioned also that you had done some recruiting internally to attract people who might not have been, officially within the cybersecurity function to join. I'm curious, do you have thoughts around how other organizations can improve recruitment efforts in order to attract new and diverse talent into the cybersecurity function, whether that's within the organization or externally? Carolann, do you want to start with that, considering you have experience?
Yeah, KPMG really actually created that environment to really enable that, and allowed for job shadowing and basically being able to take on a role for 6 months and be able to go back to your role if you didn't like the new role. So I have to say that the organization did help that a lot by having those types of programs where the job shadowing and the, for couple of hours a week, and as far to allowing people to switch roles for 6 months. And it really allows movement between teams and allows people to really break down the perceptions, right? Because everybody has perceptions about what someone else does. But, you know, as the old saying goes, until you walk in their shoes, you really don't know. It also promotes, I think, a lot of understanding between the groups. So even if someone comes into the security team for a while and decides this is not for me, it also creates better relationships across the IT team and gets a better understanding of what I have to do in my role and what someone else has to do in their role. So I think in most cases people are surprised at how friendly the security team is. It's a little bit like what Hayley was saying. I think there's a perception because a lot of times we're, you know, having to require people to change what they're doing in order to deliver something into production. And obviously people find that frustrating. And so a lot of the times there's a negative view of the security team, but the reality is we're really trying to help everybody. And you know, we have a mission to keep the organization secure. So when people come into the security team, they're surprised at how nice everybody is and how much fun they are. The expectation is they're very serious and strict and everything's very tough, but that's not the case, you know.
Hayley, I'm curious, do you recall what Nielsen did during their recruitment efforts or what attracted to you as an organization as an applicant?
Again, going back to perception, I think that because I also participate in some of the recruitment efforts for Nielsen, the way that I want to present our company is to be very clear that, you know, whatever perceptions people may have had about whether or not they're a good fit for, you know, cybersecurity or a company, they can kind of break those down and really see through to what we actually do and how, you know, inspiring the work is and how fun, like you said, the people are to work with, because really we have to keep things, you know, fun and light and get along well with each other in order to, you know, take the serious work and handle those situations as well. So really I look for, you know, my ability to see, you know, through the initial perception and engage, you know, how the people work well together. What's my opportunity going to look like? Can I, you know, take on big projects and have the authority to make decisions and, you know, sell new ideas to my leadership team and be given the opportunity to implement them? That's the main thing that I look for when I am, you know, looking at opportunities, but also what I want to show that I can offer to people on my team as well.
And Tess, I'm curious, as you said you joined Kivu recently, what is it about this role that attracted you to it?
So I have been trying to get into cybersecurity for a while now. I'd been applying for analyst positions, but didn't really get anywhere because I don't have any certificates yet and I have a limited technical understanding. So I was interested in this role because there's a business component, there's, you know, intel, threat report writing, program development, SOP writing, so things that I feel very confident in that I have experience in from previous work experience. So I knew that I would be excited about those things and it would present me an opportunity to learn more about cybersecurity. And then I was just really interested in the welcoming and collaborative nature that Kivu has. They're all about teamwork and everyone is super friendly and always sharing resources and, you know, certificate information to articles that they think are interesting. So I really appreciated that. And Kivu is also led by a female CEO. So I remember after my interview, I was slightly intimidated because I was interviewed by two males who are now my manager and my boss. And I had no reason to be intimidated. They've been incredibly welcoming. So I think that just speaks to Hayley's point earlier about how, you know, women can sometimes get intimidated by fields that are male dominated, but I feel like we're bracing ourselves for something that isn't as bad as it is. Once we get into that role, you know, we earned it. We were given the position for a reason. And they've been nothing but welcoming and really appreciative of my work, so that's very appreciated. And then too, I just have loved being able to work for a company that is led by a woman. That was something that I was really excited about as well.
Excellent. So we're going to take a question from the audience right now. So they're asking, what does the future hold for cybersecurity teams, especially in the current world situation? And I think this is specific to COVID-19 requiring that many companies now institute remote working. So it'd be great to hear what your companies have done in the recent weeks and how it's affected your teams, whether or not you felt very well prepared or there have been some unique challenges brought on by the situation. Hayley, we'll start with you.
Sure. So I will say we weren't as prepared as we would want to be, given, you know, the increased work from home, the additional threat, phishing, for example. Immediately the attackers want to prey on a circumstance just like the coronavirus concerns, right? They want to come into your inbox with something enticing to click on because everyone is so wary of, you know, the coronavirus and all of the updates that are out there. But none of the things that we've had to address in the past couple of weeks since going full remote were surprises, right? Everything was something that we already knew we needed to implement or strategize around or work on. So, you know, locking down VPN access, for example, is a big one. It's always been in the plans and the strategy and in the future roadmap, but not something that you put as priority one on your list until something like this really reminds you how critical it is. So we're dealing with the same things that most other companies are dealing with to enable folks to work from home. But nothing was a surprise, right? It's really highlighted everything that we need to work on. So we're just working on it a little bit sooner rather than later.
And Carolann, has there been a notable impact on KPMG? Prior to the webinar we were discussing, and you said that actually there's been quite a distributed structure to KPMG for a while now.
Yes, given the kind of the size and complexity of the organization and the fact that we have a mobile workforce because we provide professional services to organizations. So having a robust system for remote access has been something that has been part of our everyday business. Now, obviously, it affects things when our clients are not working, etc. But from a technical perspective, we were already a distributed security team and we're already, interacting with each other remotely. And we have, in our offices, it's shared spaces. So there are folks that do work from home, 3-4 times a week. So it's something that we were able to adjust to and manage the load easily. I know from what I've been reading is there have been organizations that have struggled with the remote access because their systems weren't designed to have the entire organization at home. So I think resilience and the ability to work from home securely is going to be a strong focus in the future. I mean, it has always been a strong focus in our industry, but I think it'll become more of a focus for a lot of industries, especially probably the healthcare industry. You can see that there's a lot of more teledoctors, etc. So I think this whole virus is going to change our perception of how we work. And it will certainly, organizations will question the idea of working in an office all the time and the cost of real estate. So I think there will be, once this is over, a big shift. But thankfully, KPMG was already in that mode. So it's been a little bit easier for us than for others.
I understand. And I'm curious if you had already kind of been comfortable and used to remote working, were there best practices that you had in place? Because it seems like in addition to having the technical infrastructure that can support remote working and distributed teams, it really relies on excellent communication and collaboration amongst individuals more than ever. Do you have any best practices that you could share with everyone?
Well, I think a lot of it is the kind of etiquette that you would expect in any meeting, except now you need to follow that type of etiquette when you're at home alone when no one can see you, right? So because so many of this is on video conference, and muting your phone if there's background noise, having a place where a quiet place for you to work. And I think some of the things too about being prepared is a lot of people work from home occasionally and have a laptop. If you're going to work from home for long periods of time like we are now, it's important that you have the right equipment, larger screens, etc. So I think for some people that will be hard to deal with because they're not used to, in certain roles, being full-time at home. But there are other folks who are used to it and have all that equipment. So I would say is having the right equipment and a quiet place to work and following the etiquette that you would in any meeting about, muting your phones, etc., while online meetings are going on.
Yeah, absolutely agree. So we've talked about, as a result of COVID-19 and people working from home, there's been a shift in how we work, but also a noticeable change in the number of phishing threats. So, Tess, I'm curious, as you're managing your clients, have you seen an increase in threats or different types of threats recently?
Yeah, so we had a seamless transition to working from home. A lot of my colleagues, and myself included, do occasionally work from home, so that was pretty simple. The issue was our work had changed. So because more people are working from home, attackers are exploiting vulnerable networks, vulnerable VPNs, and so we've just had an increase in ransomware cases and other incidents like that where we have to change what we've been working on to address the needs of our clients. So it's just been interesting to see how, if this persists, and depending, I live in the United States, so depending how long this work from home period will be, how that will affect our workflow. If, I can't do the business development side of things, if I'm going to be more engaging with clients and doing the management of the incidents that they're facing.
Tess, when you're working with your clients, have they revealed anything to you about how they're keeping their employees secure in light of these new threats? Are they doing increased security awareness training? Are they communicating that to them to be extra vigilant and cautious because they're now, opportunistic hackers?
So not everyone has been able to do that, so we've been trying to, whenever we're speaking with clients, encourage them to educate their teams about phishing, what to look for when you get a suspicious email in your inbox. Don't automatically put your credentials in something. So not everyone has been doing that. I think some people have just been so overwhelmed, particularly in the healthcare industry. I read that in the UK, the NHS is delaying their cybersecurity checks by 6 months just because they're so overwhelmed with managing COVID-19. So I think the biggest industry that will probably get hit is the healthcare industry, just because they're so overwhelmed managing the physical treatment of patients and all that involves, that they won't be able to manage their security infrastructure.
Hayley, I'm curious, at Nielsen, has your company deployed any sort of company-wide education or communication about staying extra safe while working remote?
Sure. We, I would say, are maybe somewhere between the two sides that Tess mentioned. So on it, kind of, but room for improvement. So we're very sophisticated with our training and awareness going out to our employees. But we, like you said, we have seen an uptick in the phishing, among other attacks. But thankfully, we've done our due diligence in implementing the prevention tools that, prevent things like phishing from actually causing damage. So we've done a lot of the upfront work to, even if the training wasn't 100% there and somebody clicks a phishing link, we've done the work necessary to prevent that from actually being a problem. So I'm grateful for my teammates that, maintained those systems and worked really hard to deploy them across our entire company, so that something like this isn't, something that we really have to scramble to get additional training and awareness and prevention mechanisms out there, that we're pretty much prepared.
I think one of the things that's been made evident in the past couple of weeks is just how important cybersecurity and InfoSec teams are to the running of any organization. Do you feel that there's going to be, a positive outcome because of this and there might be more resource dedicated, or do you feel that in light of the broader economic climate, you're going to be asked to do more with less? Carolann, do you have a point of view on this?
I think in our particular industry or in my particular situation, we were already doing these things. I think, because we had a mobile workforce that were remote, we, have VPN in place now, and we have monitoring of workstations, etc. We're able to remediate machines that get infected remotely. So we have a lot of controls in place. I think in general, for organizations that maybe not have had such a robust security team, I think that for them, they will end up taking on more responsibilities, things that would have been left to other folks in IT. But I think overall, organizations in general will have to make their security teams more robust. We've been moving in that direction anyway, but I think this COVID-19 is just going to accelerate that, because the remote working does introduce other complexities that you don't have when you can have everybody sitting in an office behind a firewall. So, and it's, cybersecurity has always been layers, right? And I think it always will be, and it's really making sure that those layers are in place and operating. So that, it is a difficult task trying to keep everybody secure. And I think behavioral change, educating folks is going to be really important. So if those things weren't part of your cybersecurity program as it was, they will need to become part of your cybersecurity program.
Just to add to that, I also think that if it weren't coronavirus, it's something else, right? This isn't the first major workforce impacting change that we've seen. It's probably one of the biggest, but there's always going to be more work to do than we have people to do it. So I think it's a very, common conversation of, can we add to the team, or do we need to somehow figure out how to do more work with the same amount of people? So we're, every day, every month, thinking about all of the work that needs to get done and how much more we could do if we had, just one more person or two more people. So I don't think this necessarily changes that conversation, right?
I think that's a really good point. We're nearing the end of this session, and I want to end it on a positive note. So each of you have talked about there being high stakes. We just covered that you're used to working with limited resource or, external challenges. What is the thing in your career that you have been most proud of and that has kept you building your career within cybersecurity? Tess, do you want to start with that?
Sure. I think going into a field that I didn't know a lot about is something I'm proud of. I think I was able to reach my goal, even though I didn't really have a lot of knowledge about how to get there. I just sort of got lucky with the opportunity that was presented to me. So I feel like because, Kivu has been so welcoming and so confident in my abilities, it's just even more motivation for me to work hard and learn as much as I can and contribute as much as I can to the organization. And then to make sure other women are feeling welcome as I mentioned, I'm the only female on my team, so I'd love to grow the team and get some more women on the team and just continue to really diversify the company and the workforce.
Carolann, what about you? What would you say has been, one of your proudest moments or things that you've been really happy to achieve within your career?
I think it's after building the team at KPMG. I came from an established team, or I joined an established team, and when I went to KPMG, I actually built the team. And I think probably the most proud part of that was that there was a lot of women on the team. There was, even at the leadership level, we were like 50-50, and sometimes, depending on open headcount, we outnumbered the number of our male colleagues on the leadership team. And that wasn't done because I wanted to hire women, right, or made a point of hiring women. It was through hiring the best talent. And I think that being able to have a very talented security team that has a lot of women on it is probably my proudest achievement. And especially because they're all there because of their skills and their abilities, not just because they're women, so that's definitely probably my proudest achievement.
Amazing. And Hayley, finally do you want to share your proudest achievement?
Like Tess, I'm pretty early on in my career. It's been about 3 years working in cybersecurity, so I definitely think the best is yet to come. But I'm most proud of probably taking on the cybersecurity architect role at Nielsen. I also came from no cybersecurity experience and just knew that I liked the work and wanted to continue to do it and had to prove myself. So when I was presented with the opportunity to take on this new role, you kind of have imposter syndrome and think, I'm not necessarily qualified for this, but I'll take it with stride and figure it out as I go and do my best to prove myself. So I'm most proud of, the fact that somebody thought I was qualified to take on this position, and now having been in it for a couple of years that I've, really been able to prove myself and make great strides for the maturity of our security program. I'm very proud of that accomplishment.
I think you're all being incredibly humble and modest. Your backgrounds are incredible and very impressive, and we're really lucky to have you. So I just want to thank Carolann, Tess, and Hayley so much for joining us today, also for giving us time prior to this so that we could interview them and provide profiles on a deeper level in the report. Thank you to everyone who has dialed in. If you have any questions or if you haven't downloaded the report, it's available in the portal. So please do contact me if you want to follow up. Otherwise, thank you so much and enjoy the rest of your day.